So we're recording now. So the gentleman, I don't know if I need to give names or not, but
You can give us a first name.
okay, so this guy's Keith. He asked three different questions, and the first question was he wanted to know, as long as it doesn't turn into worship, what is your opinion on the Catholic practice of seeing the Virgin Mary as our spiritual mother or other saints as our spiritual brothers and sisters?
That's a really good question. Being raised as a Protestant, that was not part of our tradition. So I never thought about it one way or the other. I just thought like for Mary. And I understand the difference between veneration and worship as he included in his question. And I'm not going to go into an explanation of that. People need to appreciate the difference between veneration and worship. Anyhow, if they don't, they need to look it up and figure it out, because Catholics are very clear that they venerate Mary, they don't worship her or saints. So that being said, when I started going to San Victor Belize in 2001, 21 years ago, I noticed that every single home I went into, and it's a small village, I've been into most of the homes there, had a picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe on the wall. And I asked some people, so what's the deal? You know, why does everybody have a picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe on the wall? And people told me because she is special to us, and she's our understanding of how much God loves us. That's cool. So anyways, I asked them to explain why, and they told me the story behind Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is a really great story. And if I told the story now, I'd want to tell it in detail, and it would take like 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm not going to do that. So I would urge people to look up the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe and why she's so incredibly important to the people of Central America. And I'm including Mexico and all the way down into northern tip of South America. And of course, there are millions of Americans, many of them of Latin descent, but not necessarily all, who also have a special veneration for Our Lady of Guadalupe. So, and that doesn't include, of course, the millions of Catholics and some non-Catholics, like, for example, Anglicans have a veneration. Church of England has a veneration for the Virgin Mary. And I wanted to understand more about it, because the people that I was working with and loved very deeply and cared about, this was really important to them. So after looking into it, which you can do easily with a Google search, just put in Our Lady Guadalupe and you find out the whole story. Wow, it makes a lot of sense. It's how God connected to the extremely oppressed people of Central America. This was early on in the 1500s, when they were being murdered, massacred, enslaved, their culture being destroyed. This is the history of the conquistadors taking over these great indigenous empires like the Aztecs. And they did it horribly, and then enslaved the people, and God came to them. And bottom line is, God said in a very personal and very strong way, "You're important to me. I love you. I care about you. I'm watching over you." So as a result of that, became, I had my own mystical experience with her, which was really quite interesting. And then in talking more with the people of Belize, I found that they had many mystical experiences with the Virgin Mary. I mean, like literally where she would appear to them and they sometimes would converse with her and things like that. So, okay, this is how their spirituality works. So as a consequence, this community center that I'm very involved with and have been for a long time now, building in there, we're going to have a shrine to Our Lady of Guadalupe in the center of the community center, because that is important to the people there. And I support them 100% in their love and devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe. As far as other saints are concerned, I don't have a problem with people asking saints for favors and intercessions and things like that. Personally, my best friend was a Roman Catholic priest who I really believe would qualify for sainthood in the Catholic Church. And there are people that I know that are actually pursuing him he's deceased. He's been deceased for quite a while now. And people are pursuing him being declared a saint. Sometimes I ask him for favors. And I don't have any qualms about asking Father Jim for a little help in the work that I'm doing down here, particularly the mission work, because I know he was very strong about mission work. So that's my answer to the question.
Okay, good answer. I am Catholic myself, so that, well, I'm not a practicing Catholic by any means, but it answers some of my questions. Trying to just get back here real quick to this question. The second question, I think it said his name was Keith. Yeah, Keith do you have an opinion on interfaith movement, not combining religions, but meeting others on common ground?
I have a very strong opinion on that question. The church that I belong to, which is called the United Church of Christ, its motto is united and uniting. And on all of its symbols, it always puts a quote from the Bible. It's the quote of Jesus from the Gospel of John, that they all may be one. I believe that there's only one church. I believe there's only one Christian faith. I believe there's only one God, one Jesus Christ, one faith, one baptism, and that it's human divisions. Now, I'm not naive. I understand that people feel very strongly about their denominations, and that some people believe that their denomination is the only correct one, the only true one, the only right one, and all the others are false. I strongly disapprove of that and disagree with it. I understand why people do it, because people have this desire to be self-righteous, like we're the only ones, everybody else is wrong, we're right. But I have worshiped in many, many different kinds of churches, and I go there looking for the Spirit of Christ, and to greater and lesser degrees, I find it. Now, a lot of what influences us in our choice of church is our cultural upbringing. So I would say that this is kind of a no-brainer. Like if you were raised in a Muslim country, what's the probability that you're going to be a Muslim? Around 100%, close to it. If you were raised in the United States as a Southern Baptist, what's the probability you're going to be a Southern Baptist? 90%. I'm just pulling these numbers out of the hat here. I mean, but probably like 90% or something like that. If you're raised a Methodist, you're probably going to be a Methodist. In a church that I served, I had a man who was a lifetime member of that church, which was United Church of Christ, and his wife was Catholic. So on Sunday, they attended both. The Mass, they had Mass before our service, early on Sunday morning. So they'd go to Mass first, and then they'd come to our church. Not all the time, but much of the time they attended both churches. I've known people that had marriage where one person was a Christian, the other person was a Jew, and they would honor each other's traditions and respect it. So all these divisions, if people love their tradition, they love that kind of liturgy, they love that kind of music, they love that kind of authority in their life. Great. They love their particular flavor of religion. Whether it's cherry or mocha or chocolate or vanilla or strawberry, that's the flavor they like, and that's what works for them. Like I was talking about the people in Belize loving Our Lady of Guadalupe. That's how God is getting to them. That's how they're receptive to God. It works. Who am I? Who are you to argue with that? Nobody. Let it go. Judge not, lest ye be judged. As you judge, so shall ye be judged. That's the words of Jesus. So I would like to see a world where all Christian churches, and ultimately all religions, respected one another, tolerated one another, and worked cooperatively with one another. I do not want to see one homogeneous church, one homogeneous liturgy, one homogeneous style of worship, one homogeneous doctrine. People have a right to have diverse points of view. Not everybody has to be a Democrat or a Republican, one or the other. You can have both. It's like the mix that makes the world go round. Different points of view. The world is so full of great people who went against the grain, who went against the current, whether it's in science, and people thought, what, this doesn't exist, but I think I can make it happen. Great corporate people like Henry Ford. I know how to make an automobile fast and inexpensive so that everyone can afford one. And he, developed. He didn't invent the assembly line, by the way, but he used it to create an automobile that you could buy for a few $100s, which was within the reach of most people. And that's why it became such a fabulous car, because prior to Henry Ford, automobiles were made one by one, and they were very costly, way beyond the reach of the average person. People who were thinking ahead of their time, like Abraham Lincoln, really struggled with the issue of slavery and states' rights and stuff like that. But he got ahead of the curve and saved the country from, the secessionist movement of the South to withdraw from the United States and create their own slaveholding country. Go on and on and on. Diversity and people, thinking ahead of what might be, as opposed to just what is what has made progress happen and what makes the world run. And I believe the same thing happens in religion. And I go into it, but there's a lot of theologians out there who really pushing ahead of the traditions and doing new things. A good friend of mine who's a professor of theology at the seminary that I attended wrote a book about theories of atonement. And he lists 5 different theories of atonement and how they've developed over time, and including the most recent theories of the atonement. These are not exclusionary ideas. They're just new ways of thinking about things. Anyways, why can't we have a world where we respect other people's relationship with God? Why can't we have that? And when I say, I don't like the word tolerate. I mean, I did use the word, and I continue to use the word tolerate other people's religions, but I don't think it's just a question of tolerating other people's religions. I think it's a question of respecting other religions. When I've talked to people about their faith that are far different than mine, like, for example, I talked to a Hindu professor one time and had a great conversation with him. I've talked to Muslims. I've talked to, Eastern Orthodox people and Jehovah's Witnesses and all kinds of people. And, God bless them. They're on their path to God. So I very strongly believe in what's called the ecumenical movement, which comes from the word meaning one house, one Christian faith, that we should all respect and appreciate one another.
Okay. I have some opinions on that, but due to time, I won't get into them. Nothing argumentative, just so you know. Keith, last question from Keith. He says, I heard another near-death experiencer say that there are other supreme beings that have created their own creations. I'm not saying necessarily I believe this, but do you have an opinion on this?
I don't believe that.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
He kind of, I know that he must be alluding to the LDS church, because I know that they believe something like that.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, this one here comes from a lady named Kathy Miller. She says, "Hi Howard, when we are reading the Bible, how do we know which parts are inspired and which parts are not? For instance, do you think the Gospels are more inspired / reliable than the rest of the New Testament? And what are your thoughts about the book of Revelations? Thank you."
Absolutely believe that the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are the most inspired books in the Bible. And that other than the slight differences between the 4 Gospels, which is entirely explainable by the fact that they were written by 4 different people. So naturally, 4 different people would have variations in the way that they saw or understood things. I think that they are solid and should be taken literally as the Word of God. I, as a Christian, believe that Jesus Christ is the complete, perfect revelation of God. And nothing else, no one else is except Jesus. Therefore, when I read the rest of the Bible, and I'm including the Hebrew Testament, the Old Testament, and the epistles, and the rest of the New Testament, that I look at it critically through the eyes of Jesus. A seminary professor once said, when you read the Bible, put on your Jesus glasses and read it through the lens of Jesus Christ. So the way to read the whole Bible is, if I may use an analogy, it's like walking through a gold field looking for nuggets of gold. Sometimes shiny things aren't gold. They're iron pyrite, fool's gold, of no value. And sometimes there are priceless gems. And a lot of times there's just plain old rocks. You got to hunt for the good stuff. And there's lots of good stuff in the Bible, tons of it. And if you read it all, you'll find them. One of my heroes is St. Paul, the writer of most of the New Testament. But he has his flaws too. He was a human being. He had his baggage that he brings into the Bible. But that's one of the things that I love about him, because Paul is so transparently human. It's really not hard to see what's coming out of Paul's background and emotions and what is purely inspired by God. I could go on and on about that because I really do love Paul and read him extensively. But anyways, the Psalms are great. Lots of good stuff in there. But anyways, yes, read the Bible through the lens of Jesus Christ, whom we know everything we need to know, and far more than we can possibly begin to understand in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Awesome. I got another one here from Lee Nolan. Sorry, didn't mean to use the last name, but Lee. During your near-death experience, Jesus showed you the world in 200 years. I am presuming this was the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Could you describe what daily life was like during this time? I believe you've done this before, but
yeah. First of all, what Jesus was showing me, what could be, what should be, what God wants, whether it will actually happen, that's up to God. And I wouldn't say it's definitely going to happen, because he also showed me another reality, which was horrible. And people always want to know, they always want to hear about the bad world. Basically hell on earth. I don't want to go into it. She asked about the beautiful world. So what I was shown was one village. So this was not, I wasn't given a tour of the whole earth, or even a country, or even a district or a county or anything. I was shown one village, and what I saw was people that lived in complete harmony. The primary occupation and concern of everybody in the village was children. And Jesus told me emphatically and clearly that that's what's wrong with this world, is that we do not put enough of our time and energy into children. Now, in this village, of course, the children belonged to parents, but the whole village was devoted to the upbringing of the children. And Jesus explained to me that different villages had kind of different cultures. And he explained that some villages were really into crafts, and some villages were into music, and some villages were more into architecture, and some villages were more into theology, et cetera, et cetera. So there were times when people, when they became adults, felt that they could get more of what they were looking for by moving to another village. Like, for example, they really wanted to emphasize music, and that wasn't the main emphasis of this village, so they would move on to another village. But people lived in small communities where everybody knew everybody, everybody supported one another. There was no class distinction. Everybody was more or less equal. Everybody worked cooperatively. For example, food and shelter were done cooperatively. Food was really quite interesting because people did a lot of praying in their agricultural pursuits and had miraculous results. By growing things, people worked cooperatively globally in controlling the weather. So if this area needed more rain, people would pray more rain for that area and they would get more rain. If they had too much rain, they'd pray for less rain and the rain would slow down. The main concern of everybody was to love their neighbor as themselves and to love God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength. That's what everybody was focused on all the time. And from my point of view, living in this world, it was paradise.
Okay. Sounds like a good spot to be. You said that it was up to God to decide which one we choose. So would that not take away human beings' free will? Like if God's going to make the decision for us, where do we fit in?
Oh, God isn't making decisions. You got it backwards. God is depending upon us. What Jesus told me God wants is worldwide conversion to God's plan. If we cooperate, we get it. If we refuse God's plan, that God's going to let us suffer the consequences of our evil ways.
How come God doesn't, I don't want to sound blasphemic here, but how come God doesn't reveal that plan in a much better understandable way to us? I mean, he does it with near-death experiences for people, but yourself that without your near-death experience, you probably wouldn't have come to God, I don't think. I mean, from what you've told me in the past, how come he doesn't offer something like that to every single human being to give us a fighting chance? Because we're kind of sinking.
Yeah, I think God is such a respecter of free will that he believes that sooner or later we're going to wake up and follow God's way. This plan is not a secret. In one of the things that you mentioned, someone asked about the book of Revelation. And that's something that we could do a whole session on, the book of Revelation, because it's really interesting. But the bottom line is that the book of Revelation is not about the destruction of the world, which not everyone, but a lot of people think it is. It's about people rebelling against God and suffering the consequences, and that God wants to create a new heaven and a new earth in this world. And that's God's plan. And so the book of Revelation is very controversial. It was from the get-go, but it was written in a time of tremendous persecution of the Christian community during the Roman Empire. And it was there to give people who were literally dying for their faith some hope that God really did have a plan, but it was out there in the future. And, basically God was saying, I know you're suffering terribly now, but things are going to change. Now that was 2,000 years ago, and we're still waiting for the big transformation, but God's still waiting. Jesus made it really clear to me, God's still waiting for us to change. And I'm not talking about that we have to be perfect and we have to be saints, but we got to turn to God. I submit to you that most people in the world, although they might say they believe in God, their actions don't show it. What I see in the United States is the God of this country is greed, wealth, selfishness, and it's not a God. I don't think this is a Christian country or a very godly country. I think there are people that are godly people and Christian people in this country, but I think they're the small minority.
Yeah, sounds a lot like Canada. Lee's got one other question here, but we got about 9 minutes. So she just asked, you also asked Jesus to show you alien life in other universes, which he did. Could you please describe this and their appearance?
Yeah, the best description, he showed me a parade of intelligent alien beings. And the best way I can describe it is the Star Wars movies. Like the cantina scene. I mean, the parade started off with people that looked like humans, and then as the parade went by, they started to get more and more strange, and then they started to get really strange, and it was upsetting me because these intelligent beings looked like nothing I'd ever seen before in my life, like things that you found in the bottom of the ocean or something. I mean, they're like really weird stuff. And so I said, Jesus, okay, I get it. I don't want to see anymore. Thanks. I got the idea. But anyways, he told me that there's lots and lots of intelligent beings in the universe. And the universe is much vaster, and there's a lot more intelligent life in the universe than we begin to know.
Cool. I'd like to hear some more about that myself, but I know that you've kind of described it, I guess, the best way you feel you can. So as far as the Star Wars similarities, I understand that because I watch Star Wars, so that'd be kind of creepy to me too, man. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't want to see much more of that. Just gonna let sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say, I love movies, and I watch a lot of movies, have all my life. And I think movies are entertainment. They are, they aren't necessarily truth. They aren't necessarily lies. They're like, in a very powerful way, communicate our imagination. And I think that a lot of times our imagination imagine things that maybe could be really are, but way out there. Like, go back to Jules Verne, because he imagined like things that were unimaginable, like submarines, and flying ships and things like that, long before any of these things existed, in any sense of the word. In the movie Star Wars, we imagine a world where we begin to connect with other intelligent life forms. Like the Vulcans and the Klingons and things like that. And I think those sometimes in our imagination, they are in a way prophetic of what may come in the future.
Awesome. I like it. There's 5 minutes. And just, I know you're looking to, you're interested in doing a Zoom with questions and answers with callers again, trying to get that out there. As soon as I can, I'm going to upgrade my Zoom here. I've been trying to, but I keep getting it's not working. So I'm going to get my girlfriend to do it because she's the tech person. But actually my stepdaughter, to be honest with you, the 12-year-old, she's the one who teaches us everything. So it's great to have her. It's crazy what kids know, isn't it? The one other thing I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind. I mean, there's 5 minutes, so you might not be able to answer it all. You said about respecting other people's religions and stuff like that. I've been reading a lot into the Muslim religion, the LDS religion, even satanic religion, because if you believe it or not, there's a satanic church in New York. The founder was Anton LaVey was the founder.
He was active when I was a young person in school in San Francisco. I'm very familiar with him. A real creepy guy.
He's creepy. He's dead now. I guess the deathbed confession was he said, "Oh my God, I was wrong." Blah blah blah. But as far as respecting other religions go, when I think about Muslim people, I think about how can you respect their religion or even the LDS religion, because they're not leading you to Christ. To me, being led away from Christ is not a respectable religion. Now, that's a question I have for you. How could you respect that? Like they say Jesus is simply a prophet. The LDS think that Jesus was just a spiritual brother to Lucifer that had, the balls enough to come to earth where Lucifer didn't. So, I mean, put it, blatantly, I guess.
Yeah.
So how could I respect that religion, I guess is my question, or any religion that doesn't bring us to God or to Jesus anyways?
Well, of course, I'm a total Jesus freak. So I want everybody to come to Jesus. And I think that when people are diverted away from Jesus, it's not a good thing. So what I do is look for what is the good that they do. And I've had a lot of good friends that were LDS people, and they were really good people, great family people, really devoted to their church, hardworking, decent people. So it's like, they must be doing something right, but I wish they were more Christocentric. But if you talk to LDS people, they will say they are very Christocentric, but I don't know, sometimes I question that. So we can look at it like Islam does a lot of good, because the majority of Muslims are really good, God-fearing, God-loving people. But this aspects of Islam that I don't like, aspects of Islam that I like very much. Like, for example, I like Sufism, which is one branch of Islam. And I despise and oppose the like Christianity and stuff like that. So, I mean, when you say Islam, what form of Islam? Whose Islam are you talking about? Because most Muslims are really good people, and they love God, and they try to the best of their ability to obey God as they understand it. So I look for the good. I look for the Spirit of Christ in all other religions, whether they even acknowledge Christ or not. When I was in China, in Beijing, I went to a Zoroastrian temple, and I really felt the Spirit of Christ in a lot of their beliefs. Very, very far from Christianity, but at its heart, spiritually very close.
Okay. There's lots of questions I have about that because I'm kind of reading about it right now. You have a lot more knowledge about that than I do, so that's why I like to pick your brain a bit. And there's other questions that come in like that. So I guess that's all I have right now. Just because I only got a minute left and I don't want it to shut off on you. So I'll try to get the Zoom set up. I don't know when a good time for you would be, but I'll message you, and if we can match up those times, I'll see if who's able to come, because lots of people all over the world, different time zones. So
yeah,
I know you like to do it early, and so do I. So I'll try to match it up for that. But I do appreciate the time again. I know you. I didn't mean to come off argumentative, or
no, you're fine.
I just get I get questionable. But anyways, I'll leave it at that. And appreciate you doing these videos. Everybody's seeming to get a little something out of them. I keep getting thumbs up and good jobs, et cetera, et cetera.
Good.
So good that you're still interested in doing them, and hopefully we'll be able to do it forever. But we'll see.
Okay.
All right, Howard. Well, I appreciate it. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you again.
Okay. God bless you, Corey.
God bless you as well. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.